Hi, this is Maheen. I am the founder of Maheen The Globe, which is a Seattle-based independent media company. And that's Tessa Hoyos. She is my Seattle intern. And we're going to just dive into the topic for today, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. That's what May is all about. And we have some sobering facts to share. 1 in 5 US adults live in a mental illness, according to National Institute of Mental Health. And nearly 450 million people worldwide are suffering with a mental illness, and only 2/3 of those people actually go and seek help. And these are some sobering facts, but we have this all women's wellness panel, which is going to help us with solutions and resolutions. So I'm just going to do a quick round of introductions here. We have Frances Hammond, who is an experienced yoga and barre instructor who's been practicing for the past 11 years. And she teaches in Seattle Athletic Club, which is my favorite club, which I've been going to for the past 8 years. We have Katy Harrison, who is an Eden Energy certified practitioner out of Seattle as well. And we had a fun gig in Prowse where I got to know her, super creative, and she has this calming energy about her. And then we have Ayeshah Alam Khan out of Houston, who's a certified health coach. And her and I go way back. I got my first broadcast journalist gig from her at Dawn News TV. Really cool and warm personality. Let's just dive into the first topic of today is that we are in this unique situation of a pandemic where everyone's at home and some of us are struggling mentally, right? So what wellness tips would you guys have for people at home to practice in this pandemic? Frances, I can start with you.
Okay, one of my favorite things has been just walking 30 minutes outside, especially once Seattle's weather has been really nice lately. So we always try to take advantage of that. That's been helping. Other times I've noticed that there's a lot of times of anxiety. So one of the things I would say is a really good breathing technique is when you extend your exhalations a little bit longer than your inhalations, there's a tendency to calm down your nervous system. So I could do a little quick demo if you like.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
So if you count for 4 inhales and then count for 6 exhales, and you can kind of mix and match those as well. If that's a little too long, you can do 3 counts and then extend it for 4 counts. So one of my favorite ways is having a little tactile sensation as well. So bringing the thumb at your base of your forefinger, and as you inhale, you'll slowly trace the thumb all the way to the tip of your forefinger, and then as you exhale, you'll trace it down, and then doing the same thing on each of the fingers, and then repeating. And generally, a lot of my students have said that's generally helped a lot with anxiety.
Cool. All right, Katy, what would you suggest?
Yeah, so I work with the energies of the body. So it's, I also love that breathing technique, by the way. One thing that you can do is calm the triple warmer meridian, which is a meridian in the energy body that governs our fight or flight system. And when we're really stressed, like most people are right now in a high anxiety state, then we need to calm that fight or flight system. So you can just rub your hands together and then shake them off. And then I take off my glasses because they get in the way, but you put your fingers at your temples very gently and take in a deep breath. And then you trace around your ears. This is the path of the meridian. You go down at the base of the earlobe and then down your neck. Hang on your shoulders. And breathe. And then you pull your hands down to your heart.
I love that.
You can do that as many times as you need. It feels really good. Yeah.
Fantastic. Ayesha, any tips you'd like to share?
So I loved both these tips, and those are actually 2 of the things that we actually do teach our clients as well. And then another thing is something I've been seeing you do, which is awesome, is what we call raising your frequency, right? It's just raising your energy to a different level. So especially for people who are really like feeling like they're in a funk. So it's like, okay, well, I mean, I think music is a great tool to use. So just putting something on that you know is guaranteed to make you smile, give you that kind of energy vibe. And I've been seeing you getting out with your daughter and doing a little dance thing. Do you notice how much better you feel? You're just operating from a different frequency.
Totally.
So that's something that's another one of the tools that we use with our clients as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, let's just get to the conversations about destigmatizing labels that are associated with depression. And in this, I have my brave soul, Tessa, who's going to share her personal mental health journey with us. And then we can go to the panel.
Thanks. So I actually recently found out over Christmas that depression runs in my family on my dad's side. I thought it only ran on my mom's side, but I guess I got the double whammy. And I was diagnosed with depression in high school, I believe. I can't remember a time when I didn't experience it and deal with it. And I'm 21 now, and I've been dealing with it for a while. And it's been a journey. I never really had the patience to deal with energy practices or any breathing, even though people would tell me you need to breathe. And so this has been an awakening experience. Katy, I was watching your videos yesterday and doing them because I was really stressed for a project that I had to do, and I felt so much better. So it's something in my adult life that I think that I'm going to incorporate more of.
Well, thanks so much, Tessa, for sharing your journey. And then just transitioning with that, how depressed is Seattle, Frances? And what's the deal with microaggression in Seattle?
Well, before the pandemic, I would say very depressed. But recently, I've started to notice a bit of a shift. And I think probably because everyone's so isolated from one another. So I think that's starting to kind of take a toll on people. One of the things I've noticed is, as I was mentioning, the 30-minute walk, I try to go outside with my dog for at least 30 minutes. And so I walk around the neighborhood. Before the pandemic, they only just noticed him because Seattle really loves dogs. So they only noticed him. They would only talk to him or comment on him and barely acknowledge me. So, I mean, I still think some of my neighbors know my dog's name, but they don't really know mine. And so then I've noticed that what they have been doing lately is they have been coming up and making eye contact and saying hello to me specifically.
Yay,
and I've also
progress.
noticed, I know, exactly. And I've noticed that's been happening a lot more frequently. I've noticed as I'm walking that neighbors are talking to one another and kind of yelling at one another because they have to keep that distance. And there's a lot more interactions going on. And just in my own personal life, I've also noticed that a lot more people are reaching out and connecting, whether it's through Zoom calls or through FaceTime. So I feel like there's a bit of a shift, and it's kind of interesting that it took a global pandemic to thaw the Seattle freeze.
It's so interesting that you say that. So, personally for me, it's been interesting. So I have a couple of happy bubbles, and I feel like they really put me in a delusion of sorts. So when I moved to Seattle around 8 years ago, I went to this building which was super social and everyone was just new. And that's why everyone was super friendly. So I was like, oh, Seattle is super friendly. And then I would go and dance a lot. And that was another happy bubble. But once you get out of those two bubbles, you're like, whoa, what's up with Seattle? Katy, what would you say?
I agree. I mean, I'm born and raised here. So I grew up on the east side, about 20 miles east of Seattle. And I'm generally a pretty friendly person and I like to talk to strangers. So I'll reach out and do that. But in general, the pods, people kind of stick to themselves. But yeah. It's getting a little friendlier, Frances.
Yeah.
Right.
I know. And at first it's like, whoa, what's going on? Oh, you're talking to me.
So Ayeshah, how are things in Houston? I'm wondering how Houston is different culturally to Seattle in that sense.
So I think I kind of lucked out because the Southern culture is much more hospitable. They're much warmer. However, it's very, very diverse. I was surprised to see how diverse Houston really is. So we get a lot of people from all over the world as well as all over the US. However, for the most part, again, we come from the brown culture, right? So we just say hey to everyone. So, it doesn't matter. And I think it does take a few people by surprise. However, for the most part, I've had a great experience. So it's very different from the East Coast, that's for sure. And I'm guessing Seattle. Yeah.
Got it. All right, so now this is like a bit of a, I wouldn't say it's controversial, but I was kind of surprised with this particular aspect of mental health. Mental health. You know, some people romanticize the idea of being, for instance, mentally ill or bipolar. And this series called 13 Reasons Why, which I haven't watched, but it had really had an impact on certain people. And it was about this girl who was about to commit suicide. So that's an interesting thing, that people are romanticizing the idea of it, and it may encourage it. I'm not sure. But also thinking of mental illness as like an attention seeking behavior, or saying stupid stuff like, oh, bipolar, that's sexy, you know, and some celebrities are endorsing it. So it kind of puts in a weird shift. And I'm not aware it's a generational thing. And Tessa can talk more because she is in junior year in Western Washington University, and she's seen a lot of that.
Yeah, I feel like I saw a lot of it more so when I was a little bit younger. But on my college campus, I go to Western Washington University, which is the northernmost university in the United States, Ayesha. So we get bad weather all the time. Everyone's depressed.
Mhm.
And it's really normal to talk about your mental health, like, oh, I'm not feeling great today, or, I'm really anxious and all that stuff. But when I was younger, I felt like I had to hide how I felt, because I was afraid of getting accused of attention seeking, and therefore people wouldn't take me seriously. I needed someone to take me seriously because I wanted help. So I knew no other way than just to hide it and keep it to myself. So with that behavior being amplified, it's really just kind of a couple steps backwards.
Yeah. So Francis, I'll ask you what you think about that. And with that addition, I also wanted to check with you on what people who are struggling right now during this pandemic, what steps can they take if they need therapy, or who they should reach out to? Because I think there are lots of people struggling.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah. See, I've seen 13 Reasons Why, and I've been watching a lot of just different shows, and for me, I've been realizing that some shows have been a little bit more positive and a little bit more, I feel, a little bit more accurate in their depiction of mental struggles, and just also opening up the conversation. One of the examples that I think of, forgive the title, but is Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. And I mean, it's a very cheeky show. It has musical numbers. However, this over the, it's about 4 seasons, and over the whole seasons, I honestly felt that it dealt with it compassionately. And it also dealt with how the people around this character, her friends and her family, how they felt, which also is kind of another thing to think about, is how can we support people who are going through different depressions and anxiety and just different areas. So I honestly felt that that was a little bit more positive in its depiction. And I think that a lot of media is starting to move towards being able to talk about it. I do want to give one example of a show. It's called Sex Education, and they had this really interesting show. It's this interesting segment about one of the characters who was hurting himself. And so his friend comes up and says, I see what you're doing. I think this statistically, I'm very afraid of you. I'm very afraid for you. I think you need help. He pushes her away. And then she goes and tells his parents, which I thought was a very interesting thing that she did. Because then I started really thinking about, well, how can we help? What are some of the steps? Do we go to the parents? Do we go to an impartial third party? Do we talk to them more? Are they going to push us away if we do try to help them? So it started making me think a little bit more about that. So I would say, we have so many tools. Like lately with social media, there's a lot of therapists are talking a little bit more about social wellness. There are other doctors. And I feel that even after different segments of shows, they have things of,
Right.
if you are struggling with this certain area, here is a telephone number to call.
Right.
So I would
Yeah.
almost say, like, yeah, that's one of the first steps, is maybe talking with somebody, but they may not be necessarily ready for that. And so at what
Right.
point do you think that we need to step in and help? So that becomes a
That's a
little bit more
really
complicated.
good point that you mentioned. And so, just like with my own thing, I feel like I shared it with the wrong friends. And sometimes that gets you in trouble too, because I come from a culture where it's already, and Aisha knows about this, right? So in Pakistan, it is not accepted that much, and people can be super judgmental. And I come from a family where we always had like normalized conversations around therapy and mental wellness. That was just a thing. And so I was like, why don't people openly talk about it? It made no sense. And over here, I feel like it's interesting. I feel people are still more accepting. But even when I interview people, I've met so many depressed musicians, journalists, whatnot. They're like, do not mention that we're depressed or whatever. And I'm just like, why? Why can't people openly talk about it? So I feel like, at least in my case, I should have shared it with the right people. My circle of trust should have been different. And you live and you learn, I feel. And, it's different with, I guess, individually as well. Katie, anything you'd want to mention about that?
Yeah, actually, my personal experience with depression, I started experiencing it probably when I was like 12 or 13, and I didn't realize I was depressed until I was 19. So I think that's just one little piece, is that a lot of times people don't actually know that they're not doing well. Like, it's normal to them.
Yeah.
And something that is really important is just for us to keep talking about it. Like, we all need to go out and do our part and talk about it in the way that we can, whether it's like just noticing, okay, for me personally, like, I like to talk about it in the way that I separate my mind chatter with noticing the awareness that I have of that mind chatter. Like, there's somebody who's aware of the mind, and who's that? And start to notice that. And I talk about it with my family over dinner, and I'll mention it, and they're like, what's that? So just planting the seeds of starting to notice more and having more awareness in ourselves, I think can help, even if it's in a really subtle way. Like, maybe someone will get a little nugget and take it with them, and have that in the moment of struggle. So.
Nice. Ayesha, anything you'd like to share?
Absolutely. So, as I said, I'm a certified health coach, and a big part of our program is the mindset work. And one of the tools we use is journaling. We call it My Life Book, where you get to really examine what your current reality is, what it is that you want. So a very simple tool is that I use with some of my clients. So the other day I was speaking to someone, and she was really feeling very frustrated because of a certain situation that happened. I was like, okay, so let's just take a look at that. Let's get the emotion out. Let's take a look at what happened. What were you expecting to happen? What was missing? How do we go forward? So I think when you just break it down in those very simple steps and allow the person themselves to kind of, really just take that deep breath. Let's just think it through. We don't need to respond right away to everything. Just take a moment to kind of just step back and look at it, like in a very, very logical fashion. And it's not a skill that we are taught. It's not something that we grow up with. It's something that's a learned behavior. So that's one of the tools that we use. And these days, with everyone being home, people have got their kids at home that they're needing to school. They fix their meals. Everyone's on top of their heads. I mean, it's a lot for a lot of people to take in, right? Learning to fill your own cup. That's another thing. And I think especially with I mean, in the brown culture is definitely there, right? Women, we're just meant to sort of, we're here to just look after everyone else. But when do you take the time to look after yourself?
Yes.
When do you put yourself on the calendar? When do you give yourself priority? Because there's only so much you can give from an empty cup. At some point, you've got to fill your cup. So it's teaching everyone, okay, can you just take out 5 minutes a day and just fill your cup? And we kind of give them tools to learn how to do that. So I think that all just helps to calm the mind and able to kind of just digest things one step at a time.
Brilliant. I mean, you bring a really interesting point. So in brown culture, self-care is zero, and especially generationally. So my mom, super selfless, and she thinks that's the way she's nurturing her soul. Like she wouldn't go for facials. She wouldn't go. She's like, no, I have to take care of you guys, and I have to take care of my husband. I have to take care. I was like, when are you taking care of yourself? Like, why is that? Like she said, it needs to be part of a calendar. We need to block times and chunks of it for ourselves. And I want to just talk about I want to talk about destigmatizing and not labeling people again, because the way I see depression, I feel like everyone's depressed. It's a spectrum. And, we all go through ebbs and flows and ups and downs, and it's just human nature. So I think sometimes even putting a label on it can actually have psychological effects on the person, because they're like, oh, there is something wrong with us because we are bipolar, or we are manic, or we are this or that. So that's another thing. And I wonder how therapists deal with that, or try to get people out of that mindset of, oh, you are a certain thing. And yeah, so that was just an interesting point I want to say. Now, I want to talk about just how do we decompress ourselves, right? So for me, I have a 2-year-old toddler, and I have a husband who has a really tough job at Amazon. So we try to find pockets of places where I'm like, I'm going to dance my heart out today, or I'm just going to listen to music, or I'm going to cook or bake, and he's finding his own creative ways. My husband's very analytical, but he's just realized he loves baking. So he's been on a baking spree every day. And he's like, I really like this. I was like, why did you do it before? So those are our ways of coping with it. I'm wondering what you guys are doing. Frances, I could start with you.
For me, I'm the type of person, I get energy from being around people. So once this quarantine happened, it was quite hard for me. So for me, it's constantly being able to connect. So I have 2 good friends and we have weekly FaceTime meetings. So that's been really filling my cup. Being able to also carve a little time for myself, whether that's 5 minutes or 30 minutes, a little bit of a meditation practice. That's been kind of nice to be able to kind of pull in and settle down. Walking within fresh air, huge. So I've been taking like small segments and kind of coping that way. And take care of myself in that way. That's or awesome. Naps. Sometimes just straight up naps is the perfect way.
Katy, what about you?
I'm definitely in the dance camp. Yeah, the other day I put a timer on my phone for an hour and just put music on and danced as much as I could. Normally I'm in an ecstatic dance community where I go to a dance studio and there's a playlist that goes from like quiet music to really ecstatic, crazy music in the middle, and then goes back down to slower music. And there's no talking on the dance floor, and you just do whatever your body wants it to do and just feel your feelings. And so I used to do that almost every week. And it's a huge kind of gap in my life with this quarantine. And so dancing is definitely my go-to.
Yeah. Nice. Ayeshah, what about you?
So I'm actually the opposite of Frances. I'm an introvert who pretends to be an extrovert. So I need my quiet time to kind of just replenish my energy. So I love to sit out in nature. I love, I have a patio with my plants. I've got my hummingbird feeders, and I just sit there. I have a meditation practice. Those are the things that I do every single day. That's just a habit. That's my non-negotiable block of time that's on my calendar. That's me time. And that's how I replenish my cup.
Love it. So Tessa and our company culture is we believe in meditation and mindfulness. So we do practice every Thursday where on Alexa, on Amazon Music, I just put spa music, and then we do some deep breaths, and I tell her to breathe in and then breathe out, and we just decompress, and then we have our editorial meeting.
That's great.
Tessa, has that been helping you? What else do you do?
Oh yeah, it's so good, and it's something that I've recently gotten into. And normally I'll just take a nap, to be honest. I love sleeping, but I also love just silence and just being with myself, not talking to anyone, and just being with myself and having a silent personal moment. That always really calms me down.
Nice. Well, are there any afterthoughts you all would like to share? We're pretty much wrapping up now. Frances?
One of the thoughts that came up, and Ayeshah sort of touched on this, was about the calling out of emotions and things that come up. One of the most useful things I studied during one of my yoga teacher trainings was about how we shouldn't label emotions, whether they're bad or good. Just let them be. Let anything that bubbles up, and just call it out, acknowledge it, and then let it go. So sometimes that's almost kind of a meditative thing that I do sometimes, and I kind of wonder if that would also help destigmatize some labels, and just not have it labeled as bad or good, because a lot of people have a tendency to do that, and just kind of let them acknowledge it and then let it be.
Absolutely. It's like you don't have to be harsh with yourself. Be kind to yourself, and that way you can kind of channel kindness to others as well and not label yourself. Katie, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think that making sure we move our bodies is really important right now, whether it's dance or if you're just stretching, because we hold those emotions that we're mentioning in our bodies. They're in our physical body, in our emotional and our mental bodies. And we might not always notice that they're there, but just simply stretching will help make space for that energy to move out of our bodies, like doing yoga, whatever it is. Body movement's very, very important right now.
Cool. Ayesha?
So I'm going to piggyback off both of you wonderful ladies. Acknowledging your emotion, whatever it is you're feeling. It's okay to feel what you're feeling. It's perfectly normal. There's nothing wrong with it. Take that breath. And I think nutrition also has a big part to play. I think when our bodies are not getting the right nutrition, you're going to see mood fluctuations. It affects every aspect of our lives. It truly, truly does. When people say you are what you eat, 100% true. So yeah, that's another factor I would definitely touch on.
Right. So we should be mindful of what we're eating. Well, thank you so much, guys. This was amazing. The idea of our Maheen The Globe MTG basically is to normalize conversations around therapy and wellness, and also just create this safe space where people talk about it openly and share whatever they have to, and no judgments. So I really, really appreciate your time, and it's a month of mental health awareness. So we may be asking and bugging you guys again to join in our weekly panels on Fridays.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Keep shining your light. You have no idea. I think healthcare workers are on the front lines, but even what you all are doing is also on the front lines. You have no idea how many lives you're saving with just these conversations and your personal practices in your profession as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.